Turning on an air cooler only to end up drenched in sweat and surrounded by heavy, sticky air is a miserable experience. But that muggy trap is usually the result of a setup error. By making a few operational adjustments, we get the machine to produce actual, crisp cold air. The cooler pulls dry, hot air through a wet barrier, mixing heat with water to blow out cool, moist air. But when incoming air is already full of moisture, evaporation stalls. The machine just spits hot, wet air straight into your room. Before you even plug the machine in, check your local weather. If you live in a highly humid coastal city, this evaporation mechanism simply will not work. If you live in a dry climate and the cooler is still underperforming, the problem usually comes down to where it sits in the room. The most common mistake is treating the cooler like an air conditioner by shutting all the doors and windows. Without an escape route, the machine continuously pumps moisture into an enclosed space. The humidity spikes, making you feel even hotter, and that trapped dampness slowly ruins your wooden furniture and electronics. This top-down diagram shows the correct placement. Position the cooler at an open window to constantly pull in dry air from outside. Then open a second window on the opposite wall to create a dedicated exhaust path for the damp air. You will know the setup is working when you feel a steady cross breeze moving completely through the space, rather than a single stagnant column of air hitting your face. A cooler is an open system device that requires the architecture of the room to breathe. Once the room's airflow is established, the next potential failure point is inside the cooler itself. The essential heat-to-water exchange happens entirely within the honeycomb cooling pads. Over time, dust and mineral deposits accumulate in these pads. When fungus takes hold, it physically blocks the gaps, preventing the incoming dry air from making contact with the water barrier. This blockage also forces the fan to blow contaminated, foul-smelling air straight into your living space. To keep the heat exchange active, you must wash the pads, clean the filter, and scrub the water tank. If the physical medium is choked with debris, the evaporation process dies right at the source. Another major hurdle comes from users trying to force the machine to output colder air by manually altering the water temperature. A very common yet misguided habit is dumping massive amounts of ice cubes directly into the cooler's water reservoir. For a few minutes, the air blowing out will actually feel noticeably colder. This line graph maps water temperature against evaporation rate. As the water temperature drops near freezing, the natural rate of evaporation plummets. The ice makes the water too cold to evaporate efficiently. To maintain a high, continuous rate of evaporation, fill the tank with standard room temperature water. By artificially freezing the reservoir, you break the specific thermodynamic mechanism the cooler relies on. With the airflow and internal mechanics sorted out, we need to evaluate the electrical cost of running this optimized setup. This bar chart compares average power consumption. A standard air cooler draws about 10 times less electricity than a 1.5-ton AC unit, but that same cooler consumes roughly 5 to 10 times more power than a modern BLDC ceiling fan. Because of that power draw, a cooler should be deployed specifically for high heat, not run constantly as a substitute for a basic fan. We now have our baseline variables established: clear external ventilation pathways, unblocked honeycomb pads, and room temperature water. When those three elements align, the result is a crisp, refreshing drop in temperature, completely free of heavy, sticky humidity. It comes down to recognizing the core difference in cooling technologies. Air conditioners demand strict isolation to work. Air coolers require constant circulation. By giving the machine the dry air and open space it needs, you align its operation with the laws of physics rather than fighting them.